All right, so the first step is always to think about what is your domain of the function. In this case, the domain is going to be where the denominator is not equal to 0. So you'll notice that I said v minus 5 not equal to 0. That means that my function is only defined everything to the left of 5 and everything to the right of 5. It is not actually defined at 5. So that's where my denominator is equal to 0. Sorry. Okay. Now, what we're going to do first is find our critical numbers. To find our critical numbers, we need to take our derivative. Now, how do we take the derivative of this fraction? Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you see it, we have a variable divided by a variable. There's no way around that, so that means we need to use the quotient rule. Now, remember, the quotient rule is like our little crisscross applesauce where we put our bottom squared in the denominator. So we'll have v minus 16, v minus 5. Fortunately, the derivative of v is just 1. The negative 16 goes to 0. The v minus 5, again 1. The negative 5 goes to 0. So my derivative is going to be the v minus 5 times 1, which I can of course just write as v minus 5, minus the other diagonal, v minus 16 times 1. Now, you'll notice that I put the v minus 16 in parentheses because I do need to distribute that negative. So if it's helpful, you might want to just put the first term also in parentheses just so that there's no confusion about like, does it matter or doesn't it? And then that is over the bottom squared. So that's going to be v minus 5 quantity squared. All right, so to simplify this, we're going to remove our parentheses. So that gives us, for this first set of parentheses, nothing to distribute. Second set of parentheses, we have minus v, and then the negative times negative gives us a positive 16 all over v minus 5 squared. You'll notice that you have a positive 1v and a negative 1v. So those terms are going to cancel. So our next step is simply to combine our like terms. And the only like terms that we have are those constants of negative 5 plus 16. So that gives us 11 over v minus 5 squared is equal to y prime. Now, for my critical numbers, I need to set the numerator equal to 0 and the denominator equal to 0. So I set numerator equal to 0 and set denominator equal to 0. So numerator equal to 0 gives us absolutely nothing to solve for. There's no x there, so we basically ignore the 11. In the denominator, I have a v minus 5 squared equal to 0. To undo this, I would take the square root of both sides and get v minus 5 equal to 0. Add 5 to both sides and get v is equal to 5. Now, you'll notice that this is not a critical number because remember, for 5, that was the one number in our domain where the function was undefined. So it's still going to go on our number line because it's part of the domain, but technically this is not a critical number. So we'll go over to the next page and we'll work through our number line. Now, keep in mind a couple things that we're going to revisit. We're going to revisit this derivative right before we set the numerator equal to 0 and the denominator equal to 0. And I am going to split this into a separate video just in case people only need one part of it.